$600. That's what the HOA fined me for fishing off my own dock, my dock on my land, over the same water where my late wife's ashes rest. And Bethany Cromwell had the nerve to say it like she was announcing happy hour specials. She stood there in oversized designer sunglasses, clipboard tucked to her chest, while her teenage son ripped past on a jet ski, so loud it sounded like a chainsaw being murdered. And right there, with lake water still dripping from my hands and base scales stuck to my fingers, I realized this wasn't some petty neighborhood spat, this was war. My name's Daniel Morrison, though most people who know me call me Tank. I'm 52, retired Navy Corps of Engineers, widower, and a man who came to Lake Thornberry because of a promise made in a hospital room that smelled like bleach, stale coffee, and the kind of fear nobody says out loud. 8 years ago, my wife Sarah, hooked up to more machines than I could bear to look at, squeezed my hand and told me, "Find us water, Danny, somewhere quiet. Build me that dock we always talked about." So I did. I bought this place off grainy phone photos while she lay there fighting stage for lung cancer with an oxygen mask on her face, and more courage than anyone should ever have to carry. 2 acres, direct lake access, old water rights going all the way back to 1943. Sarah saw the pictures and smiled through all that tubing, pointed to the deepest blue patch of water and whispered, "Right there, build it strong enough for 2 chairs." That dock became our last project together. Pine planks because she loved the smell, marine-grade hardware, because I don't know how to build things halfway, not bridges, not docks, not a life. Every board got chosen with her. Every nail got set like a prayer. She died 3 weeks before I finished it. I scattered her ashes 40 feet out, where the lake drops dark and quiet. Since then, every morning at 6, I've gone down there with coffee and a rod and sat with the sunrise until the ache in my chest settled into something I could live with. For 2 years, nobody bothered me. Neighbors waved. Kids rode bikes past the driveway. People respected the quiet guy by the lake who kept to himself and fished before breakfast. Then Bethany Cromwell moved in like a storm in heels. She'd come up from Milwaukee, bought the biggest waterfront house in the neighborhood, and ran for HOA president because nobody else wanted the headache. Within months, she'd turned the place into a suburban police state. Grass height citations, mailbox violations, sidewalk crack notices, fines for bird feeders, fines for chalk drawings, fines for breathing too loud if she could have figured out the paperwork. She didn't come after me right away, though. Not until she figured out waterfront properties sell for a premium, and my little patch of legal lake access was standing in the way of something bigger. The harassment started small. Complaints about dock appearance. Warnings over visible tackle boxes. Reports of fish odors that didn't exist. Then one morning I'm cleaning a nice base, coffee beside me, wind chimes Sarah loved tapping soft in the breeze, and I hear expensive heels clicking down my dock like a thread in rhythm. Bethany, flanked by 2 polo shirt HOA lapdogs, stops in front of me like she's about to condemn a building. "Mr. Morrison," she says, wrinkling her nose at my fishing rod like it's radioactive, "this unauthorized recreational water activity has to stop." I just looked at her. "Ma'am, I own water rights to this lake." She smiled, that fake polished smile people use when they think they're smarter than you. "The lake is community property now, honey. Your private use creates unfair advantages." And right on cue, her son came screaming past on that jet ski, engine howling, throwing wake against my dock hard enough to splash my boots. I pointed at him. "That fair too?" Without even blinking, she said, "Recreational boating serves the entire community." Yeah, that happened. Then she handed me the citation, $600, Section 4.7b, violating community standards, and as she walked away, I heard one of her assistants ask, "Think he'll fight it?" Bethany laughed. "He's a grieving widower on a fixed income. He'll pay and shut up." That right there was her mistake. See, grief does funny things. Sometimes it hollows you out. Sometimes it turns you into something focused enough to cut glass. Sarah's wind chimes started singing behind me, and for the first time in years they didn't sound sad. They sounded like a starter pistol. I went inside, opened my filing cabinet, and started pulling paper. Original deed. Survey. Closing documents. And there it was in black and white. Riparian rights extending from the property line, dating back to the original 1943 land grant. Older than Bethany. Older than her subdivision. Older than every smug little rule in that HOA binder. Then I called Jerome Washington, an old Navy buddy turned property lawyer up in Madison. Jerome used to say he'd rather fight wars with paperwork than bullets, and after I explained what was happening, He got real quiet in that dangerous kind of way lawyers get when they smell blood. 3 days later, he called me back. "Tank, your HOA queen's been busy. Bethany's real estate company bought 4 waterfront homes in the last 18 months, all below market, all from owners who got hammered with violations first." That's when the whole thing snapped into focus. This wasn't about fishing. It wasn't about noise. It wasn't about harmony. Bethany was squeezing homeowners until they sold cheap, then flipping properties or clearing the land for development. And while I'm standing there in my kitchen taking that in, I look out the window and see orange spray paint all over my dock posts. Remove illegal structure. 30 days or foreclosure. On Sarah's dock. I wish I could tell you I stormed outside, roaring like some action movie hero, but no military training kept me from giving idiots exactly what they wanted. I took pictures from every angle, time-stamped every shot, called the sheriff's non-emergency line, and documented it all. While I'm on the phone, I glance across the lake, and there's Bethany on her own dock with binoculars, watching my house. When she sees me spot her, she calmly lifts her phone and starts taking pictures of me taking pictures of the vandalism. The audacity of that woman, I almost had to admire it. That afternoon I bought cameras. 4 of them. Night vision, motion sensors, cloud backup, the whole deal. 2 nights later, at 2 in the morning, my phone lights up. I check the feed, and there's Bethany's son, the prince of jet skis himself, sneaking onto my dock in dark clothes with a spray can. I watched that kid spray OLD man go home across my fishing bench in neon green. Clear shot of his face, clear shot of his car, plate visible, and everything. I sent the footage to Jerome. He called me back in under 5 minutes. Criminal charges, civil court, and tank, there's more. County records show Bethany's tied to a Chicago development group pushing preliminary permits for a luxury marina and condo project on Lake Thornberry. A marina. My dock wasn't annoying her. My dock was in the way. The next morning Bethany came up my driveway in her luxury SUV and slid an envelope out the window like she was serving a warrant. Emergency HOA meeting. Vote on immediate dock removal. 48 hours notice. Her perfume hit me before her words did. Floral, aggressive, expensive, like a bouquet sent by a hitman. I looked at her and said, "I've got high-def video of your son vandalizing my property." Her face twitched. Then I added, "And I know about the Chicago partners, Bethany. And their money." That was the first time I saw genuine fear in her. She backed out of my driveway fast enough to spit gravel. That night at the community center, she tried to put on a show. PowerPoint slides of my dock, blurry photos of me fishing, speeches about property values and safety hazards and undesirable wildlife, which apparently now included ducks and herons. Then she stood up there and painted me as some unstable old veteran harassing HOA staff. When my turn came, I walked to the mic slow, held up my deed, and told them exactly who I was. Not a criminal. Not a nuisance. A husband who built one last thing with his wife before cancer took her. A veteran using land he legally owned. Then Jerome handed me the folder, and I laid out the part Bethany hadn't expected. Her real estate purchases, the Chicago development connection, the financial interest in clearing waterfront parcels. The room changed. You could feel it. And then came the twist nobody saw coming. Margaret Walsh, quiet, older board member, the kind of woman people overlook because she wears cardigans and speaks softly, stood up on shaking legs and said, "I can't be part of this anymore. Bethany has threatened board members, manipulated votes, and used fines like extortion." That cracked the whole thing open. A man in the 3rd row yelled about a citation over sidewalk chalk. A woman started crying over a fine her 90-year-old mother got for feeding birds. Another neighbor said Bethany had targeted them after they refused to sell. Suddenly the room wasn't hers anymore. It was a courtroom, and she was the one on trial. She still forced through a vote, barely, to remove my dock. But outside, in the parking lot under those buzzing yellow lights, Margaret pulled Jerome and me aside and told us something Bethany didn't know. For 30 years Margaret had worked in the county clerk's office. And Lake Thornberry, turns out, wasn't just a lake. Back in the 1920s, it had been created by damming a creek on public watershed land. When the power plant shut down decades later, the lake got placed into a community trust structure with legal obligations, public interest, environmental stewardship, shared access. If those obligations were violated badly enough, a qualified individual could petition the court to purchase the failed trust asset and assume management. I just stared at her. "You're telling me," I said, "I can buy the lake?" Margaret looked at me over her coffee cup. I'm telling you, Bethany's greed may have opened the door. From there, everything went hot and fast. Bethany escalated the fines. Contractors mysteriously cut my water line. So I installed an off-grid setup with solar, battery backup, well pump, the whole works. That made the neighbors start asking why they needed HOA approval for anything when a guy with a toolbox and Navy training had solved the problem in 48 hours. Then Harold Kowalski, a Korean War vet down the road, got fined for flying an American flag display in his yard. The stress sent him to the hospital with chest pains. And my cameras caught Bethany and 2 board members standing by his property line laughing while the ambulance pulled away. That footage changed everything. Jerome filed for trust dissolution. I filed a petition to purchase Lake Thornberry for fair market value, $650,000, basically every dollar Sarah and I had saved. Life insurance, retirement, everything. Bethany tried to freeze my funds, tried to accelerate foreclosure, tried to smear me in court with lies about PTSD and instability. I showed up in navy dress blues with my medals on and let her talk herself into a hole so deep she couldn't climb out. At one point, in open court, in front of cameras, she called me a terrorist. Judge Henley practically came off the bench. From there it unraveled quick. Federal investigators had already been sniffing around Bethany's Chicago partners, and our lake petition lit up their case like gasoline on a bonfire. Turns out those developers weren't just shady businessmen. They were tied into a multi-state fraud operation using HOAs to pressure veterans and elderly homeowners into selling. RICO stuff. Bribery. Extortion. The works. And Bethany, because apparently evil and stupid are drinking buddies, decided her best remaining option was sabotage. I found fresh concrete modifications on the dam spillway. Federal inspectors confirmed somebody had set it up so the lake could be partially drained in under 2 days. No lake, no dock, no sacred site protections, no environmental review, no purchase. Just scorched earth. That same night, cameras caught Bethany and 2 of her Chicago boys trying to access dam controls under cover of darkness. Federal agents moved in before I could finish my coffee. You ever see a woman in designer sunglasses getting hauled away in handcuffs next to a dam she tried to sabotage? I have. And let me tell you, justice has a beautiful sound when it happens in Lake Air. The next day, the courthouse was packed. News vans, agents, neighbors, half the county probably. Judge Henley approved the transfer. Just like that, Daniel Morrison, tank to the people who matter, became the legal owner and steward of Lake Thornberry. I stood on those courthouse steps with the deed in my hand, and for one strange quiet second all the noise faded. I thought about Sarah in that hospital bed, pointing at the deepest part of the water. Build it strong enough for 2 chairs. Funny thing is, she asked me to build a dock, and somehow I ended up buying the whole lake to keep the promise. A year later, the water's cleaner than it's been in decades. The invasive species are under control. Kids fish off a public pier where Bethany used to stage her little power plays. Harold recovered and now joins me on Tuesday mornings with bad coffee and good stories. Margaret helps run the trust with more honesty than that board ever saw in its life. Tribal representatives hold ceremonies at the protected sites, and every time I hear those prayers over the water, it feels like the lake is breathing the way it was meant to. As for Bethany, 8 years federal time. Her partners got more. Their whole operation collapsed. Property values went up the right way, not through fear, but through stewardship, honesty, and a community that finally remembered it belonged to the people living in it, not the people exploiting it. And me, I still go down to the dock every morning. Still bring coffee. Still cast the first line where Sarah rests. Some things aren't meant to change. So here's what I want to know. When somebody comes after the one thing in your life that still holds your memories, your peace, your person, how far do you go before standing your ground stops being stubborn and starts becoming justice? Tell me in the comments, because I know I'm not the only one who's ever had to choose between backing down and fighting dirty people with clean hands. And if you believe some things are worth defending, worth risking comfort for, worth refusing to surrender, no matter how tired you are, then say so. I want to hear your story too.